We are going to be talking about my favorite fantasies and sci-fi villains of all time. So I'm going to keep this list short. It's going to be eight villains. I'm going to talk about these my favorite villains of all time. This list is going to be an ever-growing, ever-changing list. I'm going to talk about briefly too what I'm looking for in a villain, why I like villains. Like, because villains are some of my favorite characters. So let's get into it.
Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel and making it the best it can be.
Villains are some of my favorite characters. Maybe it's a bad thing to say. Sometimes I relate more to the villain in books, just because villains are typically more interesting characters, right? There's like a funny joke I heard, and I don't know if it's a true story, where it's about Alan Rickman, who played Professor Snape in in Harry Potter, where they said, they asked him, why do you play such, like, to Alan Rickman, why do you play such, an evil character? It's like, I do not play evil characters. I play interesting characters. And that's kind of the thing, is like, villains are super interesting. I find their motivations interesting, but there's certain things for a villain that, has to be there for me to like them. So the biggest thing is I need to be in the head of the villain. The villain needs to show up, maybe not get a POV from them, but at least get like a backstory, kind of flashbacks, learn a little bit more about their motivations, and just, set them in this world. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? Are they on a path that, again, like, if you look at the best villains, like, outside of fantasy Orgus, well, this is within the fantasy genre. If you look at, like, Thanos, right? Bad guy, not everyone's best friend, but he has clear motivations, and he has a goal and a path in mind, and he's conviction, right? And that's what you want in your villains. You want someone who's super competent, like a hyper competent villain. You get to know them a little bit, and they're probably going to lose at the end because they're the villain, but you at least need to kind of have something that you see in you, because everyone has a darker side in themselves, and not everyone is evil for the sake of being evil. And I think, with most villains, they do not see themselves as the bad guy in their own story. And I think that's true with any person. You see yourself as kind of the main character in your own story, and the ends do justify the means, typically for that person. So this is why I like villains. They're complicated, and so they typically are just more interesting than the protagonist. Protagonists can be sometimes boring, and, like, we know when a good example is when I always play D&D, chaotic evil, or chaotic neutral. Just got to like, 'cause they're fun. They're more fun. So, anyways, done prefacing. Let's get into my list. All right, guys. So I picked 8 villains here. They are gonna be ranked, from my least favorite to my most favorite. So there's much more villains than this that I enjoy, but these are my top 8. So there are going to be spoilers here for some of the series, because I'm going to be revealing villains' names, maybe minor things that they do spoiler. So just be warned, there is a spoiler. I'm going to be talking about villains. So my number 8 is Smaug from The Hobbit. I really like Smaug. Smaug is obviously, he's a dragon. He's wise, he's dangerous, he's cunning, he's intelligent, he's arrogant too. So I really like Smaug. He's just one of those, villains that, yeah, like, he could have killed Bilbo and any of the dwarves at any point. He probably could have even, given Gandalf a run for his money too. But, he was defeated by his hubris and his arrogance in the end. And I really like Smaug. I love that, the chat with Bilbo, and Smaug. So it just getting to know a little bit about Smaug really helps make him a favorite villain. All right, so number 7, you guys knew I was gonna cheat. I always cheat on these lists, and it's a 2-4, and it's actually a Discworld one. So I'm putting in 2 Discworld villains, because there's, like, Discworld can all typically be read as a standalone. There's usually a villainous character in there, but they're more, again, like, kind of blue collar. They're not like super, like, mustache twirly, like, villains. There's a few in there, but when I came out with my most, like, hyper competent villain, so I picked 2. One was Vorbis from Small Gods. I'm gonna be doing a review of Small Gods soon, I promise. I'm gonna talk about it. I really liked Vorbis. He is just dastardly. He's evil. He is a sociopath, total sociopath. Likes to like kills animals. He kills several animals and small gods, and he's just an all around bad guy. But he has a mission. He's competent. He he knows the goal he wants to achieve, and he takes all the steps he wants to achieve it, and he uses people as a means to an end. So he's a bad dude, but he's interesting, and you see he has a very different mind, and this is spoken about in the book with Vorbis. He has a very solid mind where it's impenetrable. He only hears his own thoughts, and he's such a dastardly villain. And he's one of those characters that just steals the show because you're watching him and you're just like baffled by the villainy of this character, but you're also really relieved when he does die and get his comeuppance. So Vorbis. And then my two for that is Lily Weatherwax in Witches Abroad. Witches Abroad is one of my favorite Discworld books of all time. Lily Weatherwax is one of my favorite villains. And think of like she is, I guess a spoiler here, she is related to Granny Weatherwax. She is her sister. And the Weatherwaxes are really strong in magic, and she uses mirror magic to amplify her power. And she's super dangerous. She's super cunning, and she's again just Granny Weatherwax, but evil. But she's beautiful, and she's frightening, and she has this building powerful momentum. Yeah, she's scary, Lily Weatherwax. I'm not gonna go on too much longer about a lot of these villains, but yeah, Lily Weatherwax is a fantastic. My seventh, or I guess it's my sixth favorite villain now, since I kind of did a 2-4 there. So my sixth favorite villain is from Rhythm of War. It's a new villain. It was a 1-book villain by Brandon Sanderson, and that is Raboniel. Holy cow. This character blew me away. It's actually this character is the reason why Rhythm of War is one of my favorite novels of all time, my favorite Stormlight novel. She's just so fascinating. And when you're reading this character, if she was like, if the tables were turned, she would be the hero in a sense. So she's just a fascinating character. You feel for her. She's no doubt a villain. She's on the side of the bad guy, but she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant, and you learn so much about her, and you get to kind of Brandon does a really good job of humanizing the villains in this story in the Stormlight Archive. And even though there's these strong mythical magical beings, he really brought a human side to them with Raboniel, even though she's not human whatsoever. But you get to relate to them and see them from a different side and understand their motivations and why they're doing what they're doing. And it's great. It's really good. It's so good. So yeah, Raboniel, number 6, favorite villain. She's fantastic. So highly recommend, get through Oathbringer to get to Rhythm of War to just enjoy that character. All right, so number 5. Number 5 is actually Voldemort, surprisingly enough. And I really enjoy Voldemort mainly because of book 6, right? The Half-Blood Prince, where you get these flashbacks of Tom Riddle when he's a child, when he's a teenager at Hogwarts, and then when he's a little bit older and he's left Hogwarts and he's out and making the Horcruxes. So again, this is full spoiler, guys. We're going nuts here. And I just like this. You just learn more about Tom Riddle. You learn about his motivations, the family he came from, the upbringing he had. How could he not be evil? And the thing I like about Lord Voldemort is he doesn't hesitate. Like, he will kill you. He's gonna go straight for the jugular. He goes for the kill. And I like that in my villains. They do not hesitate. Don't wax poetically to the good guy and give them a chance to get away. No, kill them. Like, shoot him in the head. Like, you're done, right? So I do like that about Lord Voldemort. And you get to understand, like, his motivations. Like, he's afraid of death. He's fearful of death. He doesn't understand love. And that's why he makes the Horcruxes, because he breaks himself apart. And it's just... It's so heartbreaking to see a character so powerful do that to themselves, because they do not understand something that they'll never understand, right? And she did a very good job with this character. You don't like Voldemort, you never really root for Voldemort, but you feel for him a little bit. And it was just enough. It was just enough for me to really latch onto that character a little bit and not think he's a totally like worthless villain. Because that's the thing with like the trope of the big bad of the Dark Lord, is sometimes they're done really poorly. Like Sauron is a bad villain. Like I do not like Sauron as a villain. I love Lord of the Rings. Sauron is a shitty villain. He is really bad. Like Saruman's a better villain. You never interact with the villain. And that's the thing with that Lord Voldemort does, the Dark Lord. He interacts with Harry Potter. He kills a lot of Harry Potter's friends, and he's one of those characters that, a man often meets his destiny on the road trying to change it. But, he's a good villain. I love him. So, Lord Voldemort, number 5. This is a new villain. I guess he comes up in 2 of the 4 books in the series. So the series is Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio. The villain is Siriani Dorieka. I'm not going to give too many spoilers here about this character. You get a lot more from Siriani in book 4. He is a Cielcin prince. And man, is he terrifying. There's like godlike worship of him. He's very alien. You see his alienness. You see his motivations. You see what he will do to people, humans in general. What he does to Hadrian in book 4. Just a great villain. Like, because Christopher Rocchio did a fantastic job in this book, Kingdoms of Death, having you relate to Siriani, a very alien creature. I guess I keep saying it's an it. So relating to it, it displays a lot of emotions that you would see in a human, but it's so alien as well. And you see its motivations. It's Christopher just does a fantastic job, because Hadrian is stuck in a situation where he can only talk to the bad guy. And it's bad. It's bad for Hadrian, but you get to understand Siriani, which makes it so much better. Like, the stuff Hadrian goes through sucks. It's brutal. But it's made better because of the understanding you get of Siriani Dorieka. So, yeah, I don't want to spoil too much of that one, but he's a fantastic villain, and it's mainly because of Christopher's writing is just so fantastic. And where this character commits atrocities, and you still end up kind of like, yeah, he's okay. Like, yeah, if I was like a Cielcin, I would support him. Like, if I was an alien, I would support Siriani. So, yeah, so that's my number 4, Siriani Dorieka. All right, moving on. Number 3, top 3, my favorite villains of all time. So, number 3 is Tywin Lannister from A Song of Ice and Fire. I love this character. I think actually Charles Dance too is a fantastic cast for this character. But just looking at Tywin Lannister from the books, all the things I like, you get in his head, and this POVs from like Arya and like Tyrion. I think there is some POVs too from Tywin as well. You're in his head, you understand his motivations, he's hyper competent, he doesn't mess around, he makes the difficult choices that need to be made as a villain. And again, he doesn't see himself as a villain, he's just doing right by his family. He's like, this is what we need to do to achieve our ends as a family. And fantastic. This is like I said, I've gotten a lot of heat for my video on Game of Thrones. Again, I'm not going to read the series again. I don't plan to read the 6th book if it ever comes out. George writes fantastic characters. Tywin Lannister is one of those favorite characters for me. He's just a fantastic villain. And his death was just as tragic for me. So I'm like, no, this is my favorite character and you're killing him. Like I said, I like villains a lot, and he was one of my favorites. But I get his ending in the book. He was one of those characters that he was a scene stealer when he was on the page. He was a scene stealer when he was in the show, and absolutely fantastic. All right, so number 2, my second favorite villain of all time. This is a character who, I guess they're kind of an anti-hero, but they're really a villain when you first introduce them, and that's Darth Vader from Star Wars. I've read all the Star Wars novelizations, not all of them, but I've read, the original trilogy, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi novelizations. I've also read a few other Legends stuff now, like Star Wars Dark Lord, Labyrinth of Evil. I've read a few of them, and I really enjoy Darth Vader as a character. He's one of my, obviously, probably the most famous, best cinematic movie villain of all time. He's great in these books. His presence really comes across the page. When you hear the breathing, or when it's written, it's breathing. Yeah, Darth Vader, he's just a very humanized villain, where even though he's kind of robotic, and he's got all these cybernetic modifications and he's in this black suit, there's a humanity there deep down. And, you go through that with Luke trying to seek out, spoiler, Darth Vader is Luke's father. His father's, turned from his father from the dark side to the light. And you see this conflict, but you don't actually see the conflict within Vader until the very end. But this conflict is happening with the kind of the way Vader treats Luke and he treats Luke's friends. And yeah, Darth Vader's always just going to be an absolutely fantastic villain, always an absolute fantastic character. Again, he's one of those other characters, the way he became Darth Vader. He's like a man, like I said, a man meets his destiny on the road trying to change it. Vader is that story. That is the story of Darth Vader. And I just love the character. He's cool. He just looks cool. He acts cool. He does cool things. And he's deadly. Like Vader in his prime, deadly. So, so fantastic. It was actually even nice to watch him in Obi-Wan too, even though I wasn't a huge fan of that show. I did really enjoy Vader in that. So yeah, Darth Vader, the novelizations of Darth Vader and the Star Wars trilogy is my number 2 favorite villain. All right, so number 1, my favorite villain of all time. This character, everyone hates this character. And this villain is written so exceptionally well. Like you just hate this person no matter what. And so to get to the punch, it's Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter and I guess the Order of the Phoenix. Oh, she's so evil. Like she's a total sociopath. Like she does what she does because she likes to be malicious and evil. I love to hate her so much. She's just written so fantastically. She's one of those characters like I do not like you, and every decision you make I do not like. I get why you're making it because you are just malicious and evil, and it's fantastic. Like I remember reading this book for the first time when I was younger, and just having this visceral hatred for Dolores Umbridge, like Voldemort. He's kids' gloves. Like Dolores Umbridge, just passionate hate, and I loved it. You see her; she has this with the way that J.K. Rowling describes her. It's just these iron curls, this short little mouth with dagger-like teeth, and she's just described perfectly. Her motive, and the thing is, she has no motivation about her only motivation is just to be a jerk. That's her whole motivation, is to ruin Harry Potter's life, and I love it. It's so good. She's just so if she was a person, if I saw her, you just want to hit her in the face, right? Just not drop her, right? But she's just such a great villain. You forget Voldemort's the villain because of the visceral hatred you have for this character. And she's great. She's awesome. It's weird to say that I like this villain just because I hate her so much. But I just marvel at Joanne Rowling's writing of this character because she's dastardly. So, anyways, guys, if you stuck around to the end, I would love to know who your favorite villain is. In any kind of series, don't care, sci-fi, fantasy, fiction, horror, let me know who is your favorite. If you have a list, let me know a list of your favorite villains, because villains are just so much fun. They're interesting, and I know this list is going to change because, I'm just reading as much as I can, and yeah, so guys, let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to hear who your favorite villains are, because like I said, villains are some of my favorite characters, and if you can provide me with a villain I'm going to I'm all over it. All right, guys. That's it for me, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.